on today's StoryBeat.
I love meeting people from all over the world. I love it. I love it when, we're getting close to the festival and I'm exhausted and I'm just ready. You think, oh God, I'm ready to get it over. But then you have thousands of people coming, and especially all those filmmakers, and they're so excited and they come up to my desk and I'm meeting them. I've been communicating and now I'm meeting in person. I just love that feeling. I'm so glad for that.
This is StoryBeat with Steve Cuden, a podcast for the creative mind. StoryBeat explores how masters of creativity develop and produce brilliant works that people everywhere love and admire. So join us as we discover how talented creators find success in the worlds of imagination and entertainment. Here now is your host, Steve Cuden.
Thanks for joining us on StoryBeat. We're coming to you from the Steel City, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My guest today, Susan Guerell, has been the executive director of the Julien Dubuque International Film Festival for more than a decade. This renowned festival has grown under Susan's direction to become one of the most well-respected film festivals in the indie filmmaking world, attracting filmmakers and film lovers from far and wide. MovieMaker Magazine recognized it as one of the 25 coolest film festivals in the world and one of the top 50 film festivals worth the submission fee. The festival is among the top 100 best-rated festivals on filmfreeway.com. Susan is also an indie film producer and co-founder of Oakmill Entertainment. In 2016, she produced the internationally released feature film Supercon, starring John Malkovich, Clancy Brown, Mike Epps, Tyrus, and more. Since then, she's produced multiple indie features, shorts, a TV pilot, and even a documentary traveling across the United States in an RV. Susan comes from a musical family that have been in the Christian recording and distribution industry for over 40 years. Her husband, Ken, has worked in the film industry for over 30 years as a special effects supervisor on major motion pictures. So for all those reasons and many more, I am truly delighted to have the gifted producer, Susan Guerell, join me today. Susan, welcome to StoryBeat.
Hi, great. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I'm excited.
Well, it's my great pleasure to have you on. So let's go back in time just a little bit. You clearly grew up in a musical family.
Yes.
And is that where your interest in show business began, in the music business?
Well, we'll clarify too. I can't sing, so I definitely wasn't thinking I was going to be a star or anything. Singing was not in my my bingo card. I can dance pretty good, but I was very lucky. My mother was a singer in Ireland. Her and her sister were actually her sister had won the Eurovision contest years ago. Then they had been like a duet. They were going to be signed to a label, and then my mom chose marriage, and then of course me. So they had always been in their family, very much so. In the States, though, my mother did more on the Christian recording and distribution end, and did very well with that as far as for distribution when Christian music was really strong. I kind of found where it's not as strong, but now it's back. But so I've always helped with them. We did events, conferences, helped with their artists, and we put on a show called the Unity Awards, kind of like the Dove Awards for Christian artists. We did it for Catholic music and we did that for 10 years, and it was all over. It put on big concerts and music groups. So I was very lucky and very blessed. And along with that, my dad was a dentist. So they had...
Well, we have something really in common. My dad was a dentist.
Really? Well, that's right.
Yes.
You got good teeth. You got good teeth.
It's why I can bite really hard.
Yes.
So that put you into the business of show from very early on. You understood what it was like to be around show people and what it was like to put on a performance and be around so on. But what got you then interested in movies? Because you've spent most of your career in movies.
Yeah, when I got married, I spent most of my time taking care of raising the kids at first. So that was always priority. Being a mom was extremely important to me. And my husband was filming all over the world, and so he was gone a lot. And we lived in Florida. I always did things like I used to work at Disney, and I was a Disney character.
Wait a minute. Time out. My ex-wife was a Disney character.
You're kidding.
No,
Wow.
she was the first Roger Rabbit.
She must have been between the like 5'1" to 5'4" height because
Exactly right.
you have to, I'm 5'2" and you get to do all those sizes. Yes. Yeah, I know. That's so funny. Well, dentist, boy, I wonder what else we have in
Dentists,
common.
costume characters, yeah.
Yes.
So you were doing it from early on as a performer, but
Yeah.
what was it about movies that attracted you?
Well, my husband, I have to give credit to him. When we moved to Florida, he worked parking cars, and he always wanted to be in the movie industry. So it really wasn't something I thought I'm really going to do. I'm not as good about stepping forward and making things happen. He was really good at it. And he wrote a resume out and kind of lied about what he could do. And this director of a TV show in Universal at that time, Superboy, he brought him in and really liked him and hired him as a PA. And then he just grew from that and worked into special effects. And then that kind of got me interested. And then we moved back to Iowa and I was working with my parents. The kids grew up. And I knew that I really liked finding stories that were important to me. Not that they have to be faith-based films, but family films. Back to the, where you can get together as family and, like the old Indiana Jones movies. Those were always good and you can watch together. And I love stuff like that. So I started kind of looking for material of script or stories that I liked. My husband had just won a Primetime Emmy, and a gentleman had approached us about if I would help him to do a documentary on. And at that time, I'd done a few shorts, and I said, "I'll help you with this documentary across it's Ragbri, across the state of Iowa." And that was my first thing. So I knew some people in the industry, and I hired one of them to help with it. And so I was kind of on a learning, and I really enjoyed that.
So it sounds to me a little bit like you fell into it rather than it was something you
Absolutely.
set out to do.
Yeah, more like just by chance. And I really liked it. And I thought, oh, this is really, I want to do a little more now.
So it's interesting because so many guests, they, when they're 4 or 5 years old, it's like movies, movies, TV, but
Oh,
that
no,
wasn't your case at all.
no, no. And I liked performing. I was more like public relations and talking to people. Never thought I'd get into producing or running a film festival. Not, that was never a my, like, that's what I want to do. I really didn't know what I want to do. I was a little bit more partying and enjoying life than focused.
Well, then who then did you start to look at and study? Who were your heroes as filmmakers that you could look up to and say, "Hey, that's an interesting way. I want to go that direction."
Oh, that's so funny. I gotta say, I don't think I had any. I don't remember looking somebody and going like, I want to be like that. Now I did, if I'm to look at films, I loved Steven Spielberg. I loved how he created these amazing family type films
Indeed,
and what he did,
indeed.
and I loved that.
Hmm.
So probably if anything, it would be maybe on that end. But no, but it just really was by chance that I landed into something I enjoyed doing.
So then how did you train to do it? How did you know what to do?
Going with other people. So when I had the other producer come in, I asked a lot of questions. I watched, I met some other people. And then that documentary that I did got me into the film festival. And then through that, I met other people. And then just asking, met some really good friends that are good producers out of LA and would talk to them, well, how's that work? How do it? I mean, for me, I was always good at troubleshooting if things were wrong or how do I work. I was good at talking to people and communicating. That's super important. And I think that's why, I was able to do what I did. I mean, there's all kinds of different producers. So my producer was bringing things together, working with people, being there if there's problems, working through it. That was kind of where I end up falling into.
It sounds to me like you're a very organized person.
Well, my mother wouldn't say that, but yes. She'd
Uh,
probably disagree, but yes.
well, I would think it would be pretty difficult to. I don't think it. I know it for a fact, certain that it would be very difficult to produce a movie if you don't have a certain organizational capability.
Yeah.
So otherwise, it's just a total chaos all the time. I mean, it's
Oh, yeah.
already chaotic enough as it is. It can't be more chaotic than that.
And you have to remember, my husband was growing in the industry. He was working a lot, and I learned a lot from people. I met people through him, so was able to learn a lot through that too.
So
So
were you in Los Angeles doing this at the time?
no, we are mostly in Florida. And then
In
when
Florida,
because back then,
in
film,
Orlando.
yeah, yeah, they were big back then when there was before tax incentives started coming into each state. He was gone a lot, and I decided I wanted to move back home to Iowa to be near my parents, and we did. And he just traveled all over the world.
So he was also doing special effects out of Orlando at first then.
Oh yeah, yep.
It was out of Orlando.
And then he started going all over the
Was
world.
it at Universal Studios Florida?
Yes, I think a couple he did like Superboy, Swamp Things. I don't know if you remember any of
Mhm.
them. Rescue 911, those kind of stuff.
Well, so more this is bizarre because even more coincidences, I spent a year working at Universal Studios Florida on the theme in the theme park.
Oh, you.
And that's where I met my ex-wife who was the costume character. So it's all
Oh
it
my
all is
gosh.
of a piece.
It's all meant to be. That's hysterical.
It's like well, that's the first time that's ever happened for me. So it really is quite hysterical. So all right, so now you have started to produce movies at this
Mhm.
point, and you have a criterion, which is the movies need to have a family angle to them. They can't be dirty, creepy horror movies.
Well,
They're going to be somewhat family oriented. Yes.
it was supposed to be that if it was a film that I owned or anything, like I started kind of putting money into some scripts and start finding stuff, then yes, that was my criteria. If I was hired as a producer or doing work, then it was more, I mean, I wouldn't do anything that was, porn or anything like that. I mean,
Right.
anything bad. But like Supercon, it's kind of a running joke in the family because Supercon end up having a lot of F words, and my mom counts them, and it's like this big joke. There was 152 F words in that, and I hear about it all the time. So I do want that film that has no F words, so she can't say anything.
Well, did you select the movie or did it select you?
A friend of mine that we knew, had this idea that he pitched to myself and a very good friend, another good friend of mine, who was going to be the investor. And he pitched it to us, and she just loved it, and we went from that. But it didn't it had a few of that in there, but he liked actors to improv more, and I think a lot of that got thrown into it. And when I did Supercon, once again, I was going in there as learning from a different producer that we brought in, but we had a lot of problems with that producer, so I learned a lot on that movie, a
Hmm.
lot.
Isn't it true that you learn a lot on every movie because everyone is a little different than the last?
Yes, but what I learned on that one was that you should know a lot of stuff and you should be aware of things. And it was good, but I did, like I said, I learned a lot from it. I learned how to read contracts because I wasn't as good on that. And even though you rely on attorneys, I learned to read everything and
Oh,
understood.
that's I'm so glad to hear you say that because I'm a contracts reader too, and I think it's very important for people in the arts, not just producers, but anyone in the arts, performers and writers and so on, to read contracts to know what you're getting into. Don't you agree?
Oh, absolutely. It's annoying because sometimes you're like, what is all this garbage?
All this language.
There is similar language you're going to see all the time. Like, okay, that's the typical attorney language, but there's pieces in there that you should know what it means and where your rights are because it came very handy with Supercon with that particular film.
No doubt, and that's going to be true for most movies, especially where there's serious money involved.
Yes.
Um, so, what does a producer? What do you do with most of your time before you go into production? What is it that you're doing? Trying to acquire properties, or what else? What does a producer do trying to get to a production?
Yeah, I think it just depends. Like if there's all kinds of different producers that do things. Some are just a specific producer that is a troubleshooter, pulls everything together at the beginning. So let's say a production, if you're a big studio, I'm not with studios, I'm obviously indie. So a big
Right,
studio comes in, they're going to hire or have their own producers that are in charge of that project. They
right,
find the director, they start lining up the cast, they find a line producer who then works on getting all the other below the line crew in. And then when you start getting to production, things kind of flow. I mean, it's like a system. It's a well-oiled machine, and your job then as producer to make sure that working with the line producer, that's kind of what I did, make sure that we're staying within budget. If there's problems, how do we troubleshoot? What are we going to do? If something's going to take us over budget, then that producer's got to go talk to investors. So it just depends for me because if I grab a project or I see something I like, then I might go out and try to find money for it.
hmm
And then when I find money for it, then we're going to shoot it. Then I would find a director and I would work with the above the line to then the line producer then would start working on the below the line.
And are you part of the breakdown of the script, or do you hand that off to a line producer or production manager or
I
someone like
work
that?
because I'm working indie and to help save money. I do still bring in a line producer, but sometimes then I'll look over. I'll have them do the actual breakdown, and then I look over and go, okay, wait a minute, this, how about this? I think we can save here, and I try to do that, or at least talk
Hmm.
about it.
Hmm. So, okay, so the question that immediately comes to mind from your last comment, which is, I think most people that try to make movies, the big bugaboo, at least at first, is how do I get money? What do
Mhm.
you do to go find money? Do you have people that you can automatically go to, or is it a constant struggle to find folks?
Oh, it's constant struggle because it's hard. I don't have access to people all the time that have big money. And,
Hmm.
film industry is a huge risk. And so smaller short films are a little easier sometimes to get, but short films don't make money. They just maybe help, further your career.
Hope you get to the next level.
Right.
The short film is a sales tool almost.
Exactly. Exactly. And documentaries don't really make a lot of money. I mean, they do a little more now because there's more platforms for them. But I would be more up. I can't say, yeah, I have tons of access right now. It's now more people coming to me and saying, hey, I've got this project. And I'll say to them, I really like the project, and I'd be happy to help work with the people and help put your pitch deck together, help put the tools that you need. But I don't have access to all the money. I can definitely ask, but I can't guarantee I can fund this. So they have to go out and find their funding.
Well, they come to you because they know you have expertise in having produced other movies.
And you're easy to work with. I'm very friendly, Steve, apparently.
I can tell. I can tell you're not exactly a holding me at bay. That's a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So you mean you
And
need somebody. A producer's got to be able to talk to people, be able to communicate, and I think build trust and honesty and create that. And I think that's what helps.
do you need to go seeking distribution before you go into production?
It's a great question. I think indie films, it's hard because you're going to have a hard time if you don't have named. I think there's things you should do that help with distribution. If you're able to find the money and you can put it together, then at least put a couple named. It doesn't have to be an A-lister, it could be a B, but a couple, named people in there. So that helps the project to sell. If you are able to work with somebody else that or find another company that, yeah, hey, we'll help fund, we'll help put it through, we'll partner with you. But just know that then if it's your project, you're going to lose control of it. It's probably whoever's going to give the most money is going to control that project. So then
Hmm.
you may no longer have as much involvement as you were hoping for.
Well, what do you say? Money talks.
Well, and that's the thing, I always, if you could find it and do it on your own and find some way and have those tools, and then, create relationships and try to get on distribution. There's so many different platforms now to sell your film or to get it out there and make some sort of revenue. Um, there's a lot of things you can do on your own.
Tell the listeners who don't know what some of those platforms are that used to not be there.
Well, even like YouTube itself, people can make money off YouTube. Facebook has a way to do video and make money off that. And then, of course, Netflix, Hulu, all those, but they're harder. But there's other ones like Tubi is out there, although they're free. There's a fellow or something like that because an O that for short films. So, I mean, there's these platforms. Maybe you're not going to get a lot of money off front, but you might get eyes out there. And if it does well, maybe it will, start making money.
Is there anything you do differently now that you never used to do that helps to raise that money and raise the interest in the movie? Is there something that you've learned along the way that you started out and it was like, oh, this is not working. I've got to do something different?
That's a really good question. I can't say yeah. I think for me, one thing I make sure, yes, I would have a named actor. That's for sure. I would have some sort of name in there or attachment. Sometimes you can get those people to do that if you create a relationship that want to be part of it. Maybe they'll do it free without what they call a pay or play, where you have to
Hmm.
pay them, and you create that relationship that they love the story as much as you do. I'm lucky through the film festival. I meet a lot of actors and people, so I try not to have to go through a probably can I say that through agents? If you could make your own personal relationship, then you're better off to get through the people.
That to me is the ideal is if you can meet someone who's interested in you, they'll tell their agent
Mhm.
to do a deal
Yes.
as opposed to them coming to you and trying to sell you somebody.
Yeah.
That's
Then it's hard.
a whole different thing. We will get to the festival in a little bit, but I want to finish up for a while about producing. I'm just curious, do you find yourself researching lots of different movies and different producers and directors and so on as to what it is you want to continue to do? Or is it you're just sort of freeform about it?
Free form. I mean, again, I'm really lucky because my husband works with so many people.
Hmm.
We learn a lot of people through him. I've met a lot of people through him, and now I've carried on my own relationships with people that I have. So I do a lot of word by mouth. I know one thing that a lot of, I guess I'll use our younger son. He wanted to go to school for film, and my husband said, absolutely not. If you want to go to school for film, so the best thing you can do is let me put you out there. Now, obviously, he had his dad. He was lucky. However, what we did instead was gave him a little bit of money that you would have maybe had to put in a college education, gave him less than that to film his own stuff. Here's your camera,
Hmm.
go out there and start shooting, let you do the research. He researched a lot and he looked at it and talked to, I mean, you don't have to know people in the industry to encourage your kids to do that. I said, if you want to go to school, go to college for a career that can make some money and then use film as a side thing, because just because you have a college education, very little does that make you going to get a movie. You are not going to have a film just because of
Well,
that.
that's 100% true. I taught in a university for 10 years and
Oh,
I
sorry.
understand that's quite okay. I think that, and I've told many people this, I've told parents that come into school the same thing, which is school is not going to give you a career. What
Yeah.
school can do for you is help you mature and learn how to work with others and
Mhm.
to socialize, and it helps you to grow up and to get smart in the foundations of the business.
Yeah,
But you're going to learn as much in the first 4 weeks on a movie as you will in 4 years in school
that's right.
about how to make movies. So I think there's nothing wrong with going to school. In fact, I encourage people, if they
Yes.
think school is for them, that they should go to school. And I also say there's nothing wrong with not going to school to be in the motion picture industry. Was there a point along the road where you thought to yourself, you know what, I do understand what I'm doing and I am good at being a producer? Did you have an epiphany like that at any point?
Probably was Supercon. There was so many things that happened with the producer there that I went originally to learn. I wanted to go and learn from him. I was really excited because he did a movie with Halle Berry and some other people. And I thought, oh, I'm going to really learn from this guy. He does a lot of movies in Louisiana. And we were shooting for 4 weeks. I'd already been in Louisiana like 4 weeks in pre. And then I was like, wow, he realized that he was doing a lot of stuff that shouldn't happen, like double booking our lead actor and not stealing money, but wasteful money. And then I had to cover up stuff. And then he was ignoring the agents that were calling that were for the actors. That's when I went in. I found that I need to be more assertive. So originally I'm
Hmm.
trying to learn because I really didn't know. And then I go into line producer. I said, okay, give me every contract. I want to see everything. I need to get myself, I really need to read. I've always relied on attorneys. I need to know. And I read everything, read everybody's contracts. I read that our deal with him, with his company, because he was going to fund the most. But as it was, he wasn't bringing any money in. And so my friend who invested a little bit had to keep finding more money. And I said, when I read it, I noticed, and this is what's so important, that there were three things that he had not done. He didn't bond the movie, he didn't have this main actor, and there's something else. And because he didn't do those three things, the contract was all null and void, which meant the
Oof.
movie comes back to us, which
Oof.
then gets you control. So I immediately went and I had this conversation with his investor and his attorney, and I said, hey, you don't own this film. And he said, well, yes, we did. I said, well, you haven't done, oh, we didn't fund. I said, you haven't done any funding. Well, we've done. I said, no, you haven't. He goes, yes, we have. I said, you have not. And I said, and according to this contract, you didn't do these three things. We still own it. This contract's null and void. And the investor said, said to his attorney, is she right? And he said, yeah, she is. But it made me realize that if I had known that, they could have continued on and that film would even probably, it's hard to say what would happen. I know like it was hard. The crew wasn't going to get paid. I mean, we had to come up a lot. So a lot worse would have happened. But by being knowledgeable on contracts and doing what you're supposed to do, and that's what I did. And I talked to people and communicate with the crew and it was, that those are things are really important.
So at that point, you actually said to yourself, you know what? I got this. I know what I'm doing.
I said to myself that I want to continue to learn because I don't think anybody ever knows everything because I think
Yeah,
when
I
you get to that
agree.
point, then you're egotistical.
It's time to retire permanently
Yes.
if you get to the point where you think you know everything.
Yeah. But I felt more confident in myself. I felt like,
Hmm.
okay, I know what I need to do. I have learned. I know what I don't want to do, but I'm going to continue to make sure I know contracts and can continue to learn. I like learning. I like asking questions, and I think that's so important. I like to know stuff.
Well, I think that that's extremely wise because it's all about this journey of learning as you go through whatever it is you're doing. And the more that you do acquire, things become more efficient and easier for you to do. And sometimes knowing too much can also be a problem because
Yeah.
you know this is not going to work. And then you have to fight everybody that thinks they can. Right?
Yes. Oh, that happens quite often. Any of the couple of
No
films,
doubt.
and like I said, I've done more indie. I don't consider. I mean, I have the title producer and just probably something else. I don't think there's bigger producers that have been doing major stuff, but I do know that as in the indie world, I respect the budget, I respect the indie filmmaker, I respect the crew and who we're working with, and I think those are super important. And I'm extremely honest and trustworthy, and those are key elements that make you a good producer. I think, especially when you're in the indie world and everything's so tight, and have to be really good with your money and your budget and what you have.
So we've mentioned Supercon a couple of times now.
Yeah.
Tell the listeners what Supercon is about if they don't know.
Supercon's like the Comic Con, so it's just a kind of an old '80s kind of play on the characters at a Comic Con. So it's
Hmm.
80 goofy. It's not award winning. But it stars like Clancy Brown, John Malkovich, Mike Epps. It's funny. I think there's a lot of things we probably would have changed, but I was so focused with what was happening with the other producer that I didn't get to do what I wanted, was to sit and make sure that, for instance, they weren't having free range of language and it was sticking to kind of what we really wanted. So some of that got changed a little bit, but
And thus the 150 F words.
yes, yeah, that my mom counts. But it was a learning experience. You all have that film you learned from, but it's got some funny moments.
Did you find in working on that movie that working with stars, obviously John Malkovich and Clancy Brown are stars,
Mhm.
did you find that working with them was different than just working with your friends, your neighbors, and people that you've come along who aren't famous?
Yeah, I mean, you always feel more comfortable with your friends or who are, not as famous. But I will say Clancy Brown was lovely, and so was John Malkovich. They were both very, very nice. In fact, all the crew, the cast, Maggie, Grace, I can see Quantum, Ryan
Tyrus?
Quantum, Tyrus was lovely. Believe it or not, Tyrus was great. So I mean, they were all was a really nice cast, and we were really lucky that way. But
Hmm.
again, I didn't get to really be with them or focus on them as much just because I was behind the scenes working on the chaos that was happening.
Hmm. So that makes it a little bit more challenging to get to know them,
Yes.
obviously. If you're always putting out fires, I guess, on a
Yes.
movie like that.
Yeah.
Um, Obviously, producing and a movie like that, and all movies basically,
Mhm.
come with lots of pressure. There's a lot of, you're under time pressure, you're under deadlines, and so on. What do you do to deal with pressure?
I'm really lucky. I take deep breaths. I try to count to 10 before I yell at somebody. I'm not a yeller. I don't like confrontation. So I'm more one of just kind of handling it, trying to do what I can and handle the situation. Supercon was very, very stressful in that sense. But again, I don't feel like when you have a discussion with somebody that you have to be the winner. I don't think there's ever a winner when there's a discussion. It's just that, okay, I'm listening to you, but how do we solve this problem without having these big arguments? And sometimes people, they're going off, and if you're remaining calm and handling the situation, sometimes it brings the temperature down. But if I'm on my own and sometimes what I do, because I am faith-based, I technically actually would say a quick prayer. I would be like, okay,
Hmm.
God, I'm going to go in this situation that I know it's going to be hard for me, but please help me to handle it and say the right words that help the situation.
Do you feel that that really changes the equation for you as you do that?
What it does is it makes you stop and think for a minute and take those deep breaths and relax. So whether it's for people that maybe are like, well, I don't believe in God or don't have faith like that, it's still that moment. You're still saying, okay, give me the strength to be able to handle it. That now you've calmed yourself down before you went out to do the situation. So it
Hmm.
can work with no matter what. For me, it's saying a quick prayer and just saying, okay. And it gives me that moment just within myself so that I'm ready to go out and handle the situation.
I don't, and I've seen lots of stuff in my career.
Mm.
I don't think I've ever seen anyone solve a problem by yelling at someone.
No, it's true, but you hear it on set sometimes,
Of course.
anger and and it just doesn't help the situation, just makes it worse. And I don't like demeaning people either. I mean, even if you're in the wrong, I don't like to demean you.
I would say 99 out of 100 times when someone is yelling at someone, it means that they themselves are afraid and insecure.
Yeah,
And if you can step back and go, why are they yelling?
yeah,
Then you can say, what are they afraid of, or what are they don't want people to know about them at that moment?
that's right.
And that's usually where the yelling and screaming comes from.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, even this whole situation with that producer, I would get him in, I caught him lying all the time. And then I actually was ending up recording all the conversations so that I could have it because I'm like, and I found out in Louisiana, you could do that and you don't have to tell them. So I did because I'm like, okay, this guy's lying all the time. And it's my word against his. So I just started doing that and caught so much stuff and turmoil and who knows why I must say, bless his soul, because he is dead now. But and just to clarify, that's not from me. That just happened.
Well, I'm glad to hear that.
I know.
I thought we were gonna have breaking news here on the show today.
I know. I'll be on 60 Minutes. No, I just, but yeah, because it just was so bad, and that was probably the hardest, my first real huge producing job, and the hardest but I learned a lot.
Well, you were, forgive the religious term, but that was a baptism by fire.
It was absolutely.
All right. So how do you get from you've done all sorts of different kinds of motion pictures. I sort of no longer call them films because there's not much film left. It's
Yeah.
mostly on video of some kind. So I tend to call them motion pictures because that's what they are. They're still moving pictures. How do you get from features into docs, which is a whole different thing,
I know.
though it has
Yeah.
similarities, but it's a different cat, isn't it?
It is. I actually had started with the doc that I did. That was the first thing, and then end up
Hmm.
in the feature, and then I ended up doing some shorts, and then another feature, and then another doc, and then a TV pilot episode idea that we concept that we built or filmed. So yeah, it is a little different. You're actually with docs, well, our docs because they're indie docs. We're dealing with a lot less crew. Your budgets are even tighter. And it's funny enough because I just got off a documentary this summer, and my first doc that I did was Ragbri, and it's taking bicycles across the state of Iowa. So it was a traveling documentary, which is even harder.
Oh
And then
yeah.
the one I just got off of was a traveling documentary across the US in an RV.
Was it about you in an RV?
No, 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 no. The crew went on the RV and we interviewed people across the US on different political sides, just asking, are we these hated, nasty people, or do we, I mean, on both sides, all this anger, or can we just be friends and maybe to have disagreements, but should our politics define our character? And that's kind of, we just met with people all across the US and it was great.
I'm glad to hear you're doing that because it's bugged me for some time that we've become people who disagree and are disagreeable when you should be able to disagree and not be disagreeable.
Yeah.
Um, so when you're making a doc, compare it to when you're making a narrative feature. What are the big differences aside from money?
Right. So crew, I mean, and I can only base it on the experiences I had. So crew is a big difference. A feature film, you're going to have a lot more crew positions. You're going to be, probably two cameras. You're going to maybe three. You're going to have bigger lighting. For the docs that I did, they were more like run, go and run and go. I mean, you had one camera, maybe a couple PAs, your sound, one sound guy, but not a lot of lighting. You based it off, natural lighting as much as possible. It is a different, you don't really, like for us, we didn't really have like you don't have a script supervisor to make sure you're staying the same each day, and you don't have an AD. We didn't. because couldn't afford it. So, I was doing the scheduling. I didn't have a locations person, and we didn't have a transportation person, which you would that. So we had our RV driver, and then I was handling all the locations we went to and how we got there. And, if I had to make sure if we needed any permits. So you normally would have other department heads doing that. And this, as a producer, I was doing all that.
So I want to make sure I understand. The movie is not about the RV itself or
No.
being in there. It's you were doing a doc by going across the country in an RV,
Yeah.
and the doc was about people and why we're at odds.
Yes, but we did the crew itself. There were 8 of us for this documentary. We were kind of a cast as well. So it does show us in the RV. We do have blogs we did along the way. And then we had certain towns we stopped in, interviewed. And then we also did a lot of fun stuff to show that the things that we were doing had nothing as fun and friends, because the crew was a mixed bag of political visions. We didn't even talk politics on the bus really, but we then showed that we could all still have fun. We played baseball together. We went to an escape room, found out that the Democrats were smarter than the Republicans. I was very disappointed that we lost. But I mean, like, again, it wasn't about the political position of the crew.
Mm-hmm.
It was about having fun as friends, and that was the whole core idea. And then we met all these people along the way.
Does this movie have a name yet?
It's called Bridging the Gap.
Bridging the Gap. And do you have any sense of when it'll be out?
They're in editing right now, so probably in January, February, maybe it'll probably start its festival run, hopefully.
All right, because this show lasts forever, January or February of 2026.
I'm sorry, yes.
We're recording this show in August of 25, and this show will be available to people for a very long time. So
That's
that's
great. That's
why
true.
I
Thank
asked.
you.
When you're creating that, then did you start with beyond a concept? Was there an outline or something that you were trying to achieve as you were going along the way?
So the executive director, executive producer, so he was the money guy. He was also the director. It's his first time directing. He wanted to. It was his idea. He was very liberal, more sense in that, and Democrat. And he wanted. This was his idea. I wanted to go across. He was having a hard time and just hated hearing all the hatred, and he wanted to go across and do this. I've worked on. He's had me produce another movie of his before COVID. He hired me as his producer, and I did another movie. And then he asked me to do this with him. And I said, sure, I'll find you. He said, I need a conservative person. I said, I'll find you somebody. He goes, no, I really want you to do it. And I said, well, I'm not very political. I don't like having political conversations. I feel like that's a very personal thing. And I'm probably more independent. I kind of depends who's got the policies and what I feel. And I said, but I would be more conservative thinking. And then he said, yeah. And I said, and I don't argue. He goes, no, that's why I need you. Because he'll say, I'm not saying anything he won't say. He's very like high strung. And he always said, I hope by the end of this documentary, my crew still like me. And they didn't. So it was a tough shoot, but he'll be the first to say it.
Is that because he didn't know what he was doing or from the politics?
Oh, no. The funny thing is, you would have thought, oh, it's going to be the politics. Politics had nothing to do with the problems with the crew. It was his overachieving, micromanaging, his own issues and trigger issues he had, but nothing political. It was nothing
Interesting.
political.
So he was learning on the job.
Yes. Yeah.
You had a goal in mind. Of course, in a documentary, you don't really know what you're going to get till you get out there and shoot it. And then you've got to come back and put it together, which is where you are now. You're at the editorial process.
Yeah.
Do you then try to script it in a way where you say, okay, we know we're going to start here. We've recorded all this. We're going to start here and get to there.
Yes. And he had an idea, and then we mapped out certain towns we wanted to go to. So he knew he wanted to get across. I laid out, well, here, let's go here. Actually, my mom, I gave her a job, and I said, lay out, where are some interesting places to go to?
Mm-hmm.
We knew we wanted to go to Dubuque, Iowa, because that's where I'm from. And I knew I wanted to be in the middle in Donaldson, Iowa, where my family live. And do major fireworks, because my husband has a pyro license and could do big fireworks. So
Wow.
we were going to do this on my parents. They live out in the country on their property. And then go from there. We knew we wanted Waxhaw and then North Carolina, because that's where my brother lived, and he was our RV driver. And then we went up along the East Coast. So we knew that. And then Dave, the executive producer, the director, he kind of said, okay, he wanted to, let's stop here. Let's see these people. I want to go to Grand Canyon. So then I had to rearrange things. And then we worked with an amazing group called Braver Angels. And Braver Angels is an organization that has Republican, Democrat, and Independent. And they get together and they are going out and trying to get people to just get along, and not make like what the documentary was doing.
Mhm.
And they lined up all kinds of interviews for us along the way. So sometimes that kind of dictated where we might have to travel down to.
Interesting. So, are you able to then take the movies that you've made and are making and put them into your own film festival?
I don't like to do that. So it was a great question.
Yeah, well, it's a seems like it'd be a natural thing. So let's talk about festivals because this is a big part of your life too. How did you become involved in the Julien Dubuque International Film Festival?
So from that first documentary I did, Ragbri, I was speaking up in Des Moines, I think it was, and the co-founders of the film festival, it was their first year of, I call it JDIF to shorten, Julien Dubuque International, it's so long. So they came and they heard me speak because I talked about my husband and then Ragbri, and they asked if would I put that film into their festival. It was their first year. And I said, okay, sure. And then they asked would I come to Dubuque, and I'm like, oh, I go to so much stuff with my husband because he had just done the Emmy and we go to premieres through his work. I'm like, oh, I asked my son, my younger son, I said, oh, do you want to go to this little film festival in Dubuque with me? And he said, sure, we'll go. And when I got to Dubuque, I said, gosh, this city is beautiful. It's right on the Mississippi. It has these beautiful glacier cliffs, I call them. I mean, it was gorgeous. And the people were lovely. And I saw they had so much support with the arts. And so I told the co-founders, I said, listen, I can help. My husband films all over. I'm kind of in between stuff. I said, I'd be happy to come to Dubuque. I lived 3 hours south from Dubuque at that time. I said, I'll come into town and help you. I can help with build maybe more panels for you and bring people in because we knew a lot of film people. And they said, that would be great. So they had their first year. So the second year I was on the board, brought people in. The third year, then one of the co-founders quit. They got in a fight, and the one co-founder quit, so they asked me to be a senior manager. And then the next year, the other co-founder was just like, I don't really, it's not for him, and so he left, and they offered it to me. So it was definitely not planned. I felt like I was just pushing everybody out, and there I was, but I'm all out of the office. It's just me. But it wasn't meant to be like that. But it just kind of it
with
flowed
with
like
no plan to do that. It just happened that way.
never just happened. But again, all my skills from when I was young in planning, I'd planned events,
Hmm.
I've been organized things, I bring people together in producing the stuff I did, all of that together was able to said, okay, I can do this. It's just the festival is like one giant event. And then, you got all these little things happening. And I knew how to get people in the film industry come. I knew, hey, this is how we can do that. I'm good with PR and with people, very hands-on. And I knew I worked with them on their budget. So all those things, you can have all that, but in the end, it's the city itself and the people that also kept people coming.
So why is it called cool? What is cool about the festival?
I think because it just has a lot of stuff going on. First, the city itself. I mean, Al Capone used to stay there. I mean, it's got a lot of history, so it's got some cool stuff. And I think we do a lot of fun things, a lot of different events. We really make it exciting and make it for filmmakers to meet each other. Some leave and collaborated. I think that's at that time because it was years ago when they did that. I think it's just a combination of all that.
Is it only indie films?
We've had some studio, but you can't have already had distribution. So you can't be a big film out there having distribution. You have to be
Hmm.
on there. But it doesn't have to be any film.
And it's all kinds of films, I assume. It's
Yep.
narratives and docs and everything
Yep.
else,
All genres. Yep. We accept.
including animation, shorts, all that.
Yep. Animation shorts, we have a whole team that reviews. I look at them all, and then we have teams. I give them to teams to look at and score. And then from that I narrow down and get the final scores in of what's going to make it in the final festival.
So what are the biggest challenges in putting on a film festival every year?
Fundraising. You still
More
got to
about
fundraise.
money.
Yep, it does boil down. I mean, I got a city very supportive. And I think for me, a challenge for me is that I don't get bored. I love doing it, but I mean, you're doing the same thing when I have to remind myself, and everybody should remind themselves, just because you've been doing it over and over and over doesn't mean it's not new and fresh to somebody else who hasn't been and done it.
Sure,
And
sure.
it's you as your person, how you invite people and make them feel wonderful and coming. That's what's super important.
So a lot of it's about hospitality at the same time.
Lot of hospitality. I do a lot of communication with filmmakers. Like when they email, I do all my own personal emails to everybody. I keep in contact with them. I think it's super important, and I like that. And you asked me if I about my films. If I do a film, first of all, I don't make a big deal about it. I don't like to promote. Oh, it's something I produce. I don't think that's right to do that. And it has to submit, just like any other film. It still has to submit. So when Bridging the Gap is done, if it's good enough, it'll submit, and it has to go through the process and be voted in. It just doesn't get a place just because I produced it.
How many judges do you have?
I actually have about 100. So I have
Wow.
3 teams that have probably 20 to 30 people each. And on that team, they have to watch, 10 people on that team have to watch each film. So
Hmm.
every film has been watched by those 10 plus myself. So it'll have 11 scores and views.
That's interesting. And you're obviously going to receive lots of movies from first-time filmmakers and filmmakers with very little money.
Yep.
How do they stack up usually to compete with people that have more experience and have more money?
Great question. I think a couple things. One, yes, you can always tell the difference, but I've seen some indie films that didn't have a lot of money that really put what they did have into probably sound, lighting, and acting. And those really made it solid. And a good story, you can have a very simple story, but is it good? Does it have a reason? Is it telling something? And if your actors are good, you could have 2 people in a movie. And if those actors are super good and really compelling, I'll watch them. I'll be like, oh my God, they don't even have to do anything. If they're in their room, they're walking, but they're so good, you're drawn into that story. And then you don't go too long. Unless you're Marvel, you should not be doing a movie that's 2 hours long. You should be at about an hour and 20 minutes most when you are a dialogue driven movie, because otherwise, then you just get bored after that. The viewer does.
Well, there's an old adage that no scene is too long as you're engaged in it, and no scene is too short if you're not.
Yeah, very good. I like that. I'm gonna take that. I'm gonna
So
write
I-
that
I'm
down.
I'm gonna you can steal it. You're welcome to it. I will not come back and ask you for anything for it.
Great, thank you.
I'm going to ask you a question then because you brought it up that I ask lots of guests that I really love the answers to. I get lots of wonderful, wonderful answers. What for you makes a good story good?
Yeah. Well, I like comedy. I think it's also in the eyes of the beholder, the reviewer. So to me, what makes it good if it's not too long. I don't like it just drawn out and if you're repeating the same stuff over and over in the movie or documentary especially. For a doc, if you have a bunch of talking heads and it's the same things, it's too much. I like
Hmm.
comedy for me. I love to laugh and feel emotion. So I feel like good stories need to be impactful. And you know what also makes that story good? Does the music fit it?
Hmm.
Does the music can help carry a story and make it, maybe it wasn't a good story, but that music really drew you in and
Hmm.
put it together for you. So that's super important and what I feel is good.
I've been to many festivals, and one of the hallmarks of bad festival movies is bad sound.
Yes. Yes. That's what I'm saying. Sounds important.
People think it's not important at all. It's an afterthought, but
Mhm.
in fact, it should be one of your primary thoughts because the sound can make a gigantic difference.
Yes, it can, and absolutely agree. And I still am a huge thing too. And you don't have to have A-list actors, but by golly, don't put somebody who's a bad actor. Keep because one bad actor in a film can really throw you off the story. Make sure they can act. And you don't have to pay buku bucks. There are a lot of great actors out there.
Well, you can have the most wonderful scene in the world with the best actors, and if the mic drops into the middle of the frame, it's no good. So
That's true.
it's that one bad element,
Yep.
a bad actor, bad sound, bad camera work, something that's way off. that can throw you out of the movie. And the one thing that you can't do with an audience is take them out of their being in it.
That's right. Nope, that's right. And that's the problem. You do get a lot of that with a lot of films that might not make it in, is because something like that happens.
Absolutely. So what do you find is the most fulfilling thing about doing the festival?
I love meeting people from all over the world. I love it. I love it when, we're getting close to the festival and I'm exhausted and I'm just ready. You think, oh God, I'm ready to get it over. But then you have thousands of people coming, and especially all those filmmakers, and they're so excited and they come up to my desk and I'm meeting them. I've been communicating and now I'm meeting in person. And I love that. That to me is so fulfilling, that they feel like we're best friends when they get there, and that they've known me forever. And now at this point, some have. But I just love that feeling. I'm so glad for that. But yet they also know, just because you were in the festival a couple years ago doesn't mean you're always going to get in. It is a fair process, and I'm proud of that. And that's fulfilling to know that those filmmakers deserve to be there.
You've told us tons of things about in festival world, what's good and bad and so on, what works and doesn't work. Uh, what is it that you recommend to young filmmakers to do to get into film festivals? What should they concentrate on? Is it great story? Is it wonderful camera work? What do you recommend?
I think in production, in the final, I think those elements that we talked about, make sure they have decent actors in there, make sure their sound is good and their lighting is good.
Hmm.
I think those three things, and take some time for it, and make sure it's not too long. Because again, if you are a dialogue driven film, and most indie films are, because they can't afford special effects, they can't afford
Right,
all that,
right.
then you can only hold your audience for so long. And so you think they need all this info, but they really don't. Cut back to what you really need that carries a story, because when it gets past a certain length, people lose interest and they forget all the good stuff about it. Then they're just bored. So keep your length down. Less is better.
Your entire career, it seems to me, is very largely based on collaborating with others. Like, I'm a writer and I spend a lot of time alone in a room, but you spend a lot of time interacting with others. What makes a good collaboration work?
Not thinking that you're the boss, or you're in charge. So even though maybe you are, I know, like with the festival, just because I'm the ED doesn't mean that everybody else's position is important. It is. I mean, I've got a lot of volunteers. I have 100 volunteers. It's being able to work with everybody and be on the same level, and not think just because you maybe have a higher title makes you better than those people, because it doesn't. Everybody's working hard for that same collective
Hmm.
um, final, and that's important, I think.
So that as a collaborator, you're on the same page.
Yep. And respect. I feel like I can respect everybody. Everybody's working hard and trying, and that's really what's important.
I think that that's really great advice. Well, I've been having just the most marvelous, fun conversation for not quite an hour now with Susan Guerell, and we're going to wind the show down just a little bit. And I'm wondering, you've told us all these incredibly wonderful stories, but I'm wondering, is there a story you can share with us that's either weird, quirky, offbeat, strange, or just plain funny from all your experiences?
I do. And as long as it doesn't have to be about film, but it can be about Disney character.
Anything,
Well, I
anything from
should
your
say
career.
character, theme park character. So yes, when I used to do, like we were talking about, I was a Disney character. I did the Chip and Dale. Hope there's no kids listening. I've just ruined them. And we did a stage show. And when you're on the show, people really believe that you're that character.
Hmm.
When we're on the stage, the voices are over the speakers. But when we're on the stage, we can talk to each other, but nobody can hear us. And so Goofy, the guy playing Goofy, said, "Let me grab my arm," and said, "We're going to swing around," because we had a dance scene. And he swung around so hard that my glove slipped off, and I went flying into the audience, landed in the front row on a guy's lap, and my head popped off. Not my real head, but a fake Disney head. And my mascara was down my face. And I remember that guy just looked at me, and I just grabbed his cheeks and gave him a big old kiss, put my head back on, and jumped back in the game. You don't just stop. You keep going. That's the key. That's the
The show
learning.
must go on.
Show goes on. Kids were crying and people were, like, "Oh my God." But hey, I made that guy's day.
And you were playing Chip or Dale?
I was playing Dale, I believe, that day.
Dale.
Yep. And then I think they were more shocked to find out that Dale was a girl.
Well, it works both ways because there are boys that play Minnie and there are girls that play Mickey,
That's it. They
right?
do. That's right. So they
Absolutely
were
true.
in shock. But it was, but anyway, yeah, that would be my best, funniest story that I always remember as a kid.
That's a great story. Okay, so last question for you today, Susan.
Yes.
You've shared with us an enormous amount of very effective and useful advice, but do you have a single solid piece of advice that you like to give to those who are just starting out, perhaps, or maybe they're in a little bit in the business and trying to get to that next level?
Inform yourself. Like, think when we're talking about those contracts, it's super
Hmm.
important. Learn all the aspects you can so that when you go in and start your project, you're not just knowing one thing. You know everything. Doesn't mean you're trying to be in charge. It just knows that when people are talking to you, you're like, okay, I understand that. I understand that. And if you don't, you don't have to go to school for it. Go and read. I mean, you have so many options online now, but know those things. And I think the biggest thing is treat everybody with respect. All your crew, all your people, anybody you're with in life, be kind. Life is short for everybody. And I think if we can just show a little kindness in everything we do, maybe we'll be able to work better together and be together more. And I think that's super important. Smile a lot.
Well, I think that is, you have a great attitude. I really wish you'd have a little more energy, though.
I know, I'm really boring.
you're you're filled with just the most wonderful energy. So Susan Guerell, this has been a great treat for me, and I can't thank you enough for your time, your energy, and especially for your wisdom and all these things. And
Oh,
I
thank
thank
you.
you greatly.
You were great. I really appreciate it. And I hope it helped some people out there, or they're just bored to death and fell asleep. So one of the two.
And so we've come to the end of today's Story Beat. If you like this episode, won't you please take a moment to give us a comment, rating, or review on whatever app or platform you're listening to. Your support helps us bring more great Story Beat episodes to you. Story Beat is available on all major podcast apps and platforms, including Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, and many others. Until next time, I'm Steve Cuden, and may all your stories be unforgettable.